good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. Today we're going to be talking about how to get a COVID test result while you're in Korea for the purpose of traveling. So my trip, as you all know, was a while ago, it was a few months ago, so the requirements for traveling have changed drastically since then. That's why I wanted to do this kind of sit down intro today to bring you the most up-to-date information and kind of explain how things have changed since I traveled before going into how exactly I went about getting my particular COVID test result. So every country has their specific requirements for entry, and that can include the type of test that is accepted, as well as the duration in time prior to departure that they're willing to accept those results. For example, for the US, when I was traveling back to the US, they required any sort of COVID test that could be PCR test or antigen test, and then it had to be administered within 72 hours of departure. However, due to the Omicron variant, the requirements actually became stricter, like basically 3 days after I had arrived back into the US. And now the requirements are they still take antigen test results or PCR test results, but they all have to be administered within 24 hours of their departure time. So your time frame of getting that test and get that test result back is much shorter, which kind of limits your options, unfortunately. Or another thing to be aware of, and I'm not entirely sure how this would affect getting documentation for travel purposes, but Korea recently started limiting the number of people who are able to get PCR tests done at screening clinics. They are highly encouraging people to use at-home rapid tests instead, and only if they have a positive test result from those at-home kits are they able to get a PCR test done at the screening clinics. So my guess is that because of the amount of cases that they are dealing with and they don't want to overwhelm their healthcare system, you are still able to get a PCR test done for travel purposes, but your options for cheaper or free tests may be limited in that sense. Alright, so getting on to how I got my particular test results for traveling. Like I mentioned before, when I was traveling, the requirements for entry to the US was tests had to be administered 72 hours before departure, and they accepted PCR test results, antigen test results, which made it very convenient, especially because antigen test results usually come back much faster than PCR test results. Another thing was, for travel purposes, you had to provide a printed documentation so that the airline can check it before you board. And the information that needs to be on that documentation is the type of test that was administered, who administered it, so the lab name or the healthcare entity, the sample collection date, so when the test was administered, and then the information to the identity of the person, so yourself, right? So they would require two pieces of information. It's either your name and your birthday, or your name and your passport number. And the last thing they need, of course, is the actual test result, so whether it was negative or not. Okay, so with those requirements in mind, you got it? You got it? We're gonna go to past Amy and check in with her to see how she navigated getting the proper travel documents so that she could come back to the US. Good morning! Today, it's actually morning because I'm on my way to go get my PCR test done. That means it's almost time for me to leave Korea and I don't want to. I've actually been really bad at vlogging the last few days, or last week, because I've just been spending a lot of time hanging out with friends, and then also my skin also has been breaking out like crazy in my chin area, so I'm just not as inclined to document every single moment of the day, because that would mean taking off my mask in front of the camera and putting it out there into the world. It's a lot sometimes. I'm on my way to the bus stop right now, so hence the shaky cam, but I'm going to one of those screening clinics that the pop-up tents. I heard that the test results usually come back within a day for these screening clinics, so should be okay. ended up walking like literally all the way around. Okay, so I just got my PCR test done. They actually didn't ask any questions. It's run very smoothly. I have to give them that. It's like the moment that you get in line, they have this QR code that you scan, which goes to a questionnaire online for you to enter your name, your phone number, your date of birth, your registration number if you have one. They also have the option that if you are a foreign visitor like myself and you don't have an alien registration number, then you can check the box that says none. If you have any symptoms, all of that, you want to make sure that your phone number is correct because they text you the results. And then there's only like 3 different checkpoints where you actually like talk to someone. The first checkpoint, they have a person at a desk. She would basically was just like make sure you have your name, your date of birth, and your phone number like written on your notepad on your phone so you can show it to the next person, and then that person will use that information to look up whether or not you have completed the questionnaire, and then they'll print out a label for their test tube. So you take the test tube yourself and you go on to the person who is administering the PCR test, and it's all like really quick. The line was a little bit long, but the wait wasn't that bad. While I was in line, I was reading more into it about like getting a test result for travel, and I don't know for sure if I am able to get a printed test result for this PCR test. I know that I can get an antigen test done and like pay for that to get the test results for travel, especially at In Seoul airport. So I'm gonna make an appointment for the day of my flight, kind of as like a backup plan. Hi! Okay, so yesterday I got my PCR test done at the screening clinic, which I showed you guys. And this morning I actually woke up to the test results, and I had one of my friends call the number at the bottom to see if they could like have a travel certificate emailed to me so I can print it out. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do that. They said that it has to be done at a hospital in order for that to happen. And so I did a little bit more research. I do have my backup antigen test at the Incheon airport. The actual test is only $30,000, but then in order to get the actual certificate for travel and also like just operation fees, I guess, all those additional fees add up into like, so the actual cost of it is actually 84,000 won. And so there's another site that was recommended by Megan, who was the YouTuber that I was watching previously, in Gangnam. And so I reached out to that clinic, and then they are able to get an antigen test result back within 30 minutes for 70,000 won. So I'm going there now to get that test done, and just so I can have like more peace of mind prior to boarding and like leaving. I forgot to mention earlier, for the Gangnam clinic that I'm going to, I actually Kakao talked them and to get all the details, so it's very easy. I asked if I could make an appointment early as possible, and they just had like this list of things, including like what time you wanted your reservation or appointment, what kind of tests you are looking for, your information like your name, your date of birth, passport number, all of that necessary information that to include on the certificate, and also for the test in general. And then once I gave them all the information, they did also, I also asked them like how much it was and like what the turnaround time was. I just got my test results, but I need food, and then I'll go over more of how it was and all of that because my brain is not working right now.
1 hour later.
Hi, I am at COEX Library, Starfield Library. Hopefully you can hear me. Try not to be too loud because people are reading around. The whole process of getting my antigen test was actually quite good and really easy. the staff at the clinic could speak English as well as Korean, so there was a group of foreigners behind me who was also, they went to get their PCR test results. I wanted to pay less, so I went to get the antigen test, and it was 70,000 won, which turned out to be around a little under $60 US dollars. And they give a printed copy with your passport information, your birthday, your name, all the necessary information in English. The results only took maybe 10 minutes since taking my test. So when I got to the clinic, I just told them my name, I gave them my passport, and then they had me registered, and then the person administering the test went into this like little booth, and then they were in this like partitioned off booth with rubber gloves sticking out of the like glass window, so they had like no contact with you whatsoever. And then they just like ask you to get closer, pull down your mask so they can swab your nose, put the specimen into the test tube that they had prepared, and then that was the end of it.
So TLDR of what happened, I tried to get a PCR test done at a free screening clinic, but they didn't offer the proper travel documentation for me to use. Therefore, I booked an appointment at a clinic in Gangnam for an antigen test, and that is how I ended up getting the right documentation to come back home. Korean Air actually has a list of screening clinics on their website that are able to administer COVID tests and provide the proper documentations needed for the sake of travel. The only thing about that is I don't know what the pricing is like. If you were to go to one of those clinics, you would probably have to call them individually to double check and also to make appointments. The clinic that I went to in Gangnam was very accessible and very foreigner friendly, so that's something that I would definitely recommend to anyone who is currently in Korea and looking for a way to get their test results to come back home. Another option that I had mentioned was Incheon Airport also offers testing, but I did mention that the pricing is higher. However, they provide really quick turnaround times, and I'll link that down below as well. Depending on when your flight is, if your flight is later in the afternoon or in the evening, all you would have to do is go like earlier in the morning to get your test administered, and then they would have that result back to you in the afternoon before your flight. So it's very convenient. As always, travel requirements are constantly changing, so always make sure that you're doing your own research beforehand, and then check the CDC, check your own government's website for all the latest updates. If you're interested in Korea-specific regulations, make sure you check out Megan Ostin's YouTube. She is based in Korea and she provides the fastest updates that I have seen. She usually just uploads like 3 to 5 minute videos whenever a new regulation comes up in regards to COVID or social distancing, all of that. So unfortunately, this is my last Korea-based vlog. But I hope you still tune in because I got lots of adventures back home with my friends that I would love to share you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!